Welcome to my madness, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be taking a look at this DC Multiverse classic Joker figure. This is Mattel DC Multiverse. This is from several years ago before McFarlane got the license. And this is kind of a 70s and 80s version, almost like a superpowers kind of looking Joker. But we've got him here, picked him up new. We'll talk about price and, of course, make the determination of whether or not in the end, is this guy still worth picking up today? All right, so we've got him out of the package. He does come with a couple of accessories here. He does come with a replacement flower for his lapel that has what's supposed to be, I guess, some kind of gas or something coming out of it. So you can put that on him if you want to show him like shooting poison out of that flower. And then he does come with a cane, a little Joker head with a skull on there. Looks pretty cool, but he's got that cane there. And then we get to the figure itself, which I dig the colors. The colors look really good. They're big, they're bright, they pop. I like the addition of the flower on the lapel. I love the color of the head sculpt. I just hate the sculpt itself. I really don't like this sculpt. It's a little too superpowers-esque in the sense that it looks more like a kid's toy version of Joker instead of a more serious version. And I would say that is the big downside to this figure, is going to be that head sculpt. Like, it's fine. And I guess, you know, back in the 1980s, this was a great head sculpt. Even though this wasn't made in the 1980s, it was only made about 5 or 6 years ago. But by today's standards, that head sculpt is not great. So while I like everything about the overall look, that head sculpt really holds it back in my opinion. Now, as far as articulation goes, this dude's got like pretty much all the modern articulation you would expect from a figure like this. He's got bicep swivels, thigh swivels, standard ball hips, double jointed knees, double jointed elbows, swivel and rotation and pivot there on the wrist. Head is on a ball joint, although it doesn't really move that much. It pretty much just swivels, even though it technically is on a ball joint. Now, because of his costume and the sculpt, he doesn't really have any torso articulation, but that's to be expected with a suited figure like this. So, paint looks great. Sculpt looks good, except for the head. I know they did that on purpose. They made it look like a 1980s superpower era head on purpose, but it still looks like a 1980s era Joker head, and that's kind of the downside to it. And of course, articulation I think is really good on this thing. So for a bit of comparison here, we have him with the DC Comics supervillains Joker and the Arkham City Batman from Mattel. Both of these are kind of a 6.5-inch scale, which you can see this Joker fits right in there with that scale. And here we have him with an SH Figuarts Joker and the DC Icons Batman. And here we have him with the Mattel Movie Masters Dark Knight Heath Ledger Joker and a DC UC Batman. And finally, for some 7-inch scale comparisons, we have him with the DC Collectibles Essentials Joker and the McFarlane DC Multiverse Nightfall Batman. All right, so in the end, you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Now, I paid $25 for this guy, shipping and all. I do see him go for quite a bit more than that, especially in the package. Out of the package, sometimes you find him for as cheap as $15, sometimes as much as still $25 out of the package. He seems to be a little bit more sought after, and I'm forced to ask myself the question of why. Now look, I'm a huge Joker fan. I am glad I picked this thing up. I would love to have one of every, 6 and 7-inch scale Joker figure that exists. So I'm glad I added this to my collection, and I don't feel bad paying $25 for it, still new in package. However, it is not the greatest Joker by a long shot. The head sculpt really, really hurts this figure, in my opinion. It is, again, I understand, kind of a nod back to the superpowers days. I get that, but it's just not a great head sculpt. Like, honestly, it's just really not. I love everything else about it. The accessories are cool, even though there's not a lot of them, and the articulation and sculpt on the body is great. And I suppose, of course, you could always do a head swap on this guy, with a head that looks better, and you'd have a great figure. But just as it sits, it's really hard for me to say that it's worth picking up, especially if you already have other Joker figures, or even if you don't, there are better Joker figures out there than this thing. So In the end, personal preference, guys, but it is something that I would say in general, I don't think it's worth it, to be honest, guys. So that is it. Thank you guys for watching, and always remember to enjoy your collection.